You may have tuned out of all things Arsenal over the last few days or even the last few weeks, but don't worry, we're here to get you caught up on everything. Okay, thanks for listening. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, on Twitter, Yank Gunner. Yep, we've just caught you up. So today we're going to be discussing what type of keyboard you like typing on, the kind that click when you type or the kind that just kind of squish when you type, and whether Apple needs to up their game in terms of the new release of their, you know what, honestly, we're going to talk about strikers. We're going to talk about Rodrygo. We are going to talk a little bit about winning eras and Bukayo Saka. I think, what hopefully should be an interesting review of where we stand right now, sort of from a historic perspective and through that lens, and where Bukayo Saka stands in terms of his stature in the club and in the club's history and where he goes next from here. And hopefully that doesn't mean another club, just where he goes next with Arsenal, obviously. So there is stuff to cover, and we will cover it. And, of course, we'll keep up to date with all the latest rumors. Unfortunately, there will not be a huge Club World Cup section, so you'll have to tune into your Club World Cup Vision podcast if that's what you're looking for. But we may get to a little of that. I will tell you, we did scouting videos for Lucien Agume, for Ollie Watkins, which may become relevant. We're doing a transfer daily over on Patreon, which some days has different people on it, and some days it's just me. We've introduced a new Friday Night Clive concept where Clive gets into the Sancerre and we get him on camera and saying all kinds of crazy stuff. He had a very detailed and articulate and full-throated opinion on Nani Madueke rumors, so you're not going to want to miss that. So if you do want to join us over there, there's literally something every single day, and in many cases, 2 things a day, just to keep you abreast of what's happening. And the goal with the Transfer Daily, just so we're clear, right, is not to hyper-analyze every rumor. It's to have a little fun with the transfer reporting. Keep it light. You don't have to doom scroll. We doom scroll for you and then lampoon the stuff we find. And if there's any serious stuff, occasionally we even cover it seriously. So it's all there if you want it. We would love to have you as a part of that. We'll continue to do scouting videos using the pro scouting platform and Scott's data. And there's all kinds of good stuff going on over there. We'd love to have you as part of the community. But you're here now. That's what's really important. And here with me now as well is Tim. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. I've been on a bit of a health kick recently. Hopefully, relatively permanent. But yeah.
In terms of like food, exercise, drinking, that kind of thing.
All of the above. Yeah, I haven't had any alcohol since the Champions League final, which going to continue till I go on holiday in early August. Get into the gym 3 or 4 times a week when there's no football season. Like, it's amazing how much time and space I have to actually look after myself.
So I was going to ask, is this just a summer tradition, or is this you went to the doctor and he had some hard news for you?
No. I mean, so I do a dry month every year, alcohol-wise, which is more like I know like the actual benefits of doing a month off and then just going back and reassuming your drinking habits as limited to no kind of health benefits, more of like a detox and a discipline thing. But no, it's essentially I've got 2 bad hips, so there's a very limited scope of exercise I can do.
Interesting.
And I've put on a lot of weight in the last couple of years, and it's just like I have to make some changes if I want to kind of turn that round. So, you know, this is like a slamming of the brakes and, you know, hopefully like a bit of a change of path. So hopefully something a bit more meaningful than my annual dry month.
Yeah, I get it. I think it's always good to sort of reassess. I am trying a new concept. I don't know if I wouldn't call it necessarily a health trend, but it's definitely something that I'm working on. It's a high carb, high alcohol month where I eat a lot of pasta and drink a lot of bourbon. And I haven't run it by my doctor yet. We'll see how that pans out for me. I'm kidding, but only sort of, because my wife recently had a birthday and there were a lot of different things going on that for some reason all coalesced around going out for Italian food, which means there has been a high carb intake in the last few weeks, and I'm not training for a marathon, so it's really hard to excuse. So you can be healthy for both of us. How's that sound?
Yeah. I'll give it a shot. But 4 pounds down in the last 10 days. So, you know, all good.
Congratulations, man. That's
Thank
great.
you.
No, I don't want to joke. I think, you know, as I get older, the thing that I realize is even those little changes, those slight tweaks can longitudinally make a big difference.
Yeah. So, finding the time when you have children as well is like, yeah, because like I used to play football twice a week. I used to run, I used to swim. I can't really do any of that anymore, not just because of parenthood, like physically not able to do that. So I'm having to find like different ways to exercise, which I've never had to think about before. So like, yeah, lifestyle changes and all of that. But one thing I know I'm good at getting onto a good path when I turn my mind to it.
Yeah, habit change is hard. So if you're good at that, then that puts you in a small percentage of people. It's the one thing that I actually miss about being young is just what we call in America pickup sports, right? Which is like you go down to the park and there's a basketball game and you jump in and you play, or there's a football match and you get on and you play for a bit. And like as you get older, the one thing you just stop doing is playing organized sports. Friend groups break up, and especially in this country because the country's big and you move and you're a plane ride away and suddenly you're just not playing sports anymore. And so exercise is mostly the gym, whereas in your 20s and stuff, exercise is just, hey, I'm going to go play sports, which is actually quite fun,
Yeah, I did pick up game. This is a very me anecdote. This is, but like,
here we go.
when I went to Rio with my wife some years ago, like the culture's very like that there as well on the beach. Like you just join in. There's people playing like beach volleyball, beach football, and all of that.
I saw that in Rio. Yeah.
Yeah. So I joined in with a beach football game, but obviously, like that's not the type of football I've really ever played. So playing like bare feet with pretty hard balls, as it were. And all these people who've been doing that since they were like 5 years old and their feet are hardened to it. And I broke my toe, actually. And it was like, I had to style it out a bit and pretend that hadn't happened so that people didn't laugh at the gringo who thought he could join in and then, ends up having to go to A&E or something. But it was only a broken toe. I didn't have to do that, but yeah.
I'm more of a milk it and hope to get sympathy from others kind of person when it comes to injury. But yeah, as a final point, I'll just say like the one good habit I sort of picked up at a pretty young age is I don't do anything out of like a sense of health or a sense of positive mindset. I'm just purely driven by neuroses, anxiety, and OCD. Yep. So like I exercise 7 days a week. I don't miss a day. And it's not because I'm committed to health. It's because it's a compulsive
You're scared about
behavior.
What will happen. Yeah.
But it works. Compulsion can sometimes work until you die of a heart attack in your 50s. Okay, so that was good. That was good, Waffle. I think we did well there. It's almost like we're regular human beings engaging with one another in a regular human way. But set that shit aside. We got to get to the transfer window. I'll just ask you this, Tim. I guess staying on a sort of waffly topic is just so I'm in a WhatsApp group, and the Gyokeres v Sesko debate was raging on, and one of the guys who I'm friends with in the group was just like, at this point, I don't care. Just get one of them and get it over with. And I found myself being like, I'm literally getting ready to type out, yep, totally agree. And then I was like, it's June 23rd, and we're already like angry at the saga. And, this would be regarded as one of the earliest major signings we've ever made in our history in terms of like a major striker signing if we had signed someone by now. But there's already a fatigue with this particular saga. And I just think, how hard are you finding it, or do you think it is in general, and how potentially sort of damaging is it? Damaging might be the wrong word, but potentially from a PR standpoint, damaging for the club to have to operate in an environment where you can be in the third week of June, but because of the reporting cycle and the news cycle, a transfer situation can already be exhausting to the fan base and frustrating to the fan base, and just sort of accepting that while it's kind of fun to keep up with this news, you do have to be able to find perspective in terms of what time of year it is and where we really stand in terms of chasing our targets.
Yeah, I'm actually, I don't think this is, well, it is a waffly topic, but I think it's a really interesting one. I think there are several different sides to it. On one hand, like nothing endures nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So like it will all end the second we sign one of them, and people will forget all about this. Just like, when it was like Zubimendi's in London and everyone was like, oh, I already knew about that. But it shows you that like a lot, and I'm not criticizing here, because I think this is just a natural emotional thing, because I was the same. I was like, okay, that's nice. Whereas if I'd known nothing about it, and it's like Zubimendi's in London to sign for Arsenal, I'd be like, holy, yes, this is great. Like, obviously that's completely human, right? So I'm not criticizing, but it kind of, but some people I think do go too far this way. Like transfers are content. So it's like, I want my content. I want my episode 5. I want my episode 6, and it's actually, sometimes we lose sight of this is about our team getting better. And if one of those strikers comes in on July the 10th, that's great. That's great, because they're here for pre-season, and and that's a little while away and all of that. But like, so on one hand, I do kind of think this period of angst will probably be forgotten unless it drags right on and on, which would be inexcusable. Like if it gets to the last couple of days of August. And I was reflecting on this a lot because I think I listened to something about the 2013-14 season the other day, and everyone was talking about like, the Ozil signing, losing at home to Villa on the first day of that season, and the explosion of kind of anger around that. But actually, if you look at Arsenal's form in that period from the end of the 12-13 season to the first half of the 13-14 season, we lost something like once in 25 games. It was just that Villa game. And it happened in the middle of this like transfer fever. And it's one of the first times I can really remember like perhaps transfers overtaking the football a little bit. Because it's like, this is one defeat in like, and actually we're playing really well. But because we hadn't done any transfers yet, like that, everyone misremembers that period as like, almost conflates it, I think, with 2011-12 when we really were bad because we were losing players and all of that. So I kind of do find that very interesting, but I do also think that like there's a few things at play here from an Arsenal perspective. One, domestically, our season was over quite early, to be honest, and the fact we did nothing in January, I think, created an almost immediate focus on this summer, which I think is perfectly legitimate, because one of the reasons I understood we did nothing in January is so we could do it this summer. So I do understand that, and a lot of our league games didn't really mean very much in that period. But also, I do think also there is a thing with, shall we say, certain social media sites which are now very much like engagement driven. They're used as engagement drivers. You have less choice over what you see. And it's a bit like, even if you think you can critically dismiss something, if you keep exposing yourself to it, it will get you. It will get you. And I think, Twitter, X or whatever has become like Fox News. You know how like, I'm sure this happens in the US, right? And we have GB News over here, which is kind of a smaller scale attempt at the same thing. But you know how people will watch TV all day and they'll watch Fox News all day, and like slowly they'll just get radicalized almost.
It reshapes
just by
your worldview just from the drumbeat of it day in, day out.
Exactly. And it's almost like junk food for the brain, And after a while, to go back to our earlier conversation, if you have too much junk food, you're less agile and you put on weight and all of that. So I do think there's an element, a lot of it I kind of understand. I do think that like I see sometimes what I regard to be a big loss of perspective. And I do think a lot of it is people are sitting there reading, I think, junk, basically. And I think it is kind of clogging up people's brains a little bit. But maybe I'm just being dismissive and arrogant by thinking that. I don't know.
No, it's the dopamine thing, right? And it's like the rat to the morphine bottle. You want more updates, and even when there is no update, there's got to be an update because you need your hit, you need your update. And so, and it's funny, right? Because it's one of the reasons I wanted to do the Transfer Daily, not to keep you up to date with every crappy, terrible, stupid rumor, but to be a place where you could have fun with it, where we could lampoon it and satirize it and also stay up to date with it. So you can kind of experience it in a lighthearted way, as opposed to in the social media environment where it's not just the update, it's the replies to the update, it's the quote tweets to the update, it's the way then you read sort of angry or intense or hateful or jokey or meme or trolling, responses and things, and the whole culture around it. And to your point, like, I don't even think it's necessarily specific to any one particular news program. I think any 24-hour news network, we have MSNBC over here, by the way, which is sort of the analog on the left to a Fox News. It's the idea that anytime you have 24 hours to fill from a very specific perspective on a very specific topic, there's only so much of that time that's going to be filled with information. So the rest of it has to be filled with something, right? And I think where this all comes back to, though, is how you analyze Arsenal, not through the lens of, I'm bored of this saga. It leads back to that WhatsApp chat where I found myself wanting to agree with the idea of, at this point, Sesko, I don't even care anymore. Just get one of them in. No. it matters, and we have to get it right. And we don't have to get it right on June 23rd. We have to get it right this summer, because the other thing is so many striker signings bust. I think it's probably, and I don't have any data on this, I'm just saying this, but that's kind of what we do. So many striker signings bust. And it is a really important addition we need to make, and we have to have really big confidence in the decision we make. And so, Tim, I do think as well, let's zero in on this striker situation. I think what happens too is there's a report of questionable or dubious provenance, and the report leads people to have strong opinions about a player that has nothing to do with really whether the player is the right fit. So a great example is the latest Sesko news that's sort of circulating, whether it's true news or just, a made-up rumor, is that Arsenal are becoming frustrated with Sesko's camp, that his wage demands are too high, that I saw even one rumor that he was asking for a release clause to be included in the contract, which again, absolutely no idea if there's any truth to that whatsoever. The one thing I would say, and I'm curious to get your take on this with Sesko, it feels like we've been really interested in this player for a really long time now. And as I understand it, the way transfers work, you do kind of negotiate with the player before you go to the club. You don't go make an effort to agree on a transfer fee and get a club to sell you a player if you don't think you have a realistic chance to get the player to join you, and if you don't think you can agree terms with the player. I would be very, very surprised if Arsenal aren't in the ballpark of agreeing to something with Sesko's camp after this long of being interested in him. Because if we're this far apart on terms, how have we been this zeroed in on this target? You know what I mean? I don't see how you narrow your search to a player that you're chasing 2 years and still not anywhere close on terms. So what do you think about that aspect of it, and the extent to which, if we are this interested in this player for this long, you would think that we'd be close, at least on the terms it would take to get him to come to Arsenal?
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? I do still think there is a lot we don't know, just because there's so much subterfuge. I think we can take it for granted by now. Of course, we are interested in this player and had a long-term interest, and that the other target is Gyokeres. I think we can take that for granted, but everything in between feels a bit more like a mystery, because there's so much other filler stuff out there, and who knows what's true and what's not. I was actually in a discussion on the Discord last week where
what are the odds?
Everyone else is doing all their transfers, and I was like, if you ever feel like you want to cut out the noise from the signal, look at Ornstein's timeline, because Ornstein's timeline is this is what's done, basically, or this is the situation. That to me is a true reflection of basically everything we know for sure. Whereas, there are other reporters who either just do other things on social, whereas with David, it's just like, here's my report on this transfer, here's my report on this transfer. He doesn't really deal in an opinion or anything like that. So his timeline is actually like a really, really good capsule of what's actually what's happened, where stuff is significant. But with all of this, I agree with you. On Sesko, we bid for him last summer. Again, my assumption about us not doing anything in January was because it was a progenitor to this summer, and we've got to get it right this summer and all of that. So maybe it does feel like maybe we should have had something agreed. Does it? Maybe it is because. But did he come in April or so? So
that sounds right.
There is some information that he just likes to do this, as a negotiation tactic.
Multiple
he likes
targets,
multiple targets, and then potentially play them off against one another in that respect. So maybe there's a bit of that going on. Maybe it's Leipzig, maybe it's the price, maybe that's the point. But I just don't think we know. But I do kind of agree. Even given the whole, we get 25 non-updates a day. We are a month out now from the end of the season, and there doesn't seem to be anything agreed. And the proliferation of noise makes it feel like it's been a year. It's been a month,
Yeah.
But yeah, look, like there's clearly something, might not be anything sinister or anything bad, but there's clearly something that's quote unquote holding it up. It might just be that like the players are on holiday. It might just be that they're lying on a beach somewhere and that's why it's quiet.
Yeah, I do think that we probably don't appreciate the extent to which logistics actually do matter in a transfer, right? Just the fact that, yeah, we'll get it done, and the parties mostly agree, but the player's on holiday, or there's some kind of summer tournament, or there's international football, or there's whatever going on that's holding it up. I think there are logistics that come into this. There is a part of me, though, and I want to be careful about how I phrase this or frame this, but I think it is important to not just get so set in your worldview that you ignore the truth of the alternative perspective. And what I mean by that is, I don't want to be just the preach patience guy who's like, everybody who's impatient is just radicalized on Twitter. No, like, we've needed a striker. Now this will be the third window. It's been a very clear need. The last two windows, I think, are widely regarded, if not universally regarded, as being somewhere between a slight miss and a huge miss, depending on your perspective, because we didn't address this position. And so everyone in the club who works on transfers and thinks about building the squad must have been, and almost certainly was, focused on striker. And it does appear that our interest is coalesced around one or two targets. And the idea that we have as yet been unable to get the guy who we wanted last summer to move off of his wage demands, if that is the holdup, or his club to move off their transfer fee demands. A month after the season has ended, one window is open and closed and another window is opened into our, second summer and third window of chasing a striker. I think it is fair to not be outraged or beside yourself, but at least a bit concerned about why this isn't done. And so I guess where I'd go with this next, Tim, is like, well, first of all, do you have sympathy with that perspective? The idea that, all right, look, we could have done something if we wind up with Ollie Watkins this summer, whether or not I think that's a good signing, there are going to be people who rightfully say, we could have done it in January and that could have made a big difference in our season. So do you have some sympathy for the people or at least some agreement with the people who would look at the fact that we don't seem to have a clear plan for striker yet this summer and say, okay, yeah, it's early, but it's not that early when you look at it in the context of a third consecutive window we've needed this position addressed?
Yeah, definitely. And look, every day that passes, those people become more right. Well, I say more, like, if I'm assuming that my opinion is right, which,
it becomes a more valid observation. Let's put it that way.
Increasingly it will do. Yeah. I think, if I was to put a more definitive timeline on it, like, I don't know, that feels very kind of paradox of the heap to me, but I guess into July, like, I'd like, if possible, for them to be there for like the first day of pre-season training. That would be the kind of ideal. I suspect what it is, and one of the things that's kind of difficult maybe for us to admit or to grip, is I still don't think the market's very good for attackers in general. I like for what we want, for striker, left winger, I just don't think the market's that great. And I think we have just kind of come to a stage where it's like we have to do something, because we're essentially filling gaps. Like, when it comes to striker, I don't think we're upgrading. I think it's we literally have a gap where there's no one, essentially. So, like, maybe left winger is more of a we're looking at upgrading, and actually I think that looks really difficult. I think all the people that we're looking at, it's like, is he definitely better than Martinelli? Can I objectively say that? Like, because you get this thing when you've had your players for a while, you're much more willing to see the flaws in them. You're perhaps a little bit bored of them, and while I'm not saying that, like, Martinelli is faultless or anything like that. I think we've had conversations about how he hasn't quite gone to the level we thought he would. But when you've had a player a few years, you get bored of them and you want the new guy. Yeah. But again, objectively speaking, like, I look at like Rodrigo, it's like, how good is he? How good is he? I don't feel like I know. It doesn't feel like Ozil, where it's like, okay, this guy is just like straight up in the argument for like best in the world in his position. Like that's where we are with it. Like that doesn't it doesn't fit. Or Sanchez, where it's like he is one of the best in the world. It just so happens that Barca have assembled a team with the three best attackers in the world in the same forward line, and Sanchez is not leaving because he's crap or unwanted. It's just like he's maybe like fifth on the list and they've got the top three type thing. It doesn't feel like that to me. So there could be an element at which maybe, not that Arsenal don't care, but, that Arsenal, the reason I think this is playing out as it is probably because I'm sure they do have a hierarchy between Sesko and Gyokeres, but like, maybe it's not like we want this guy much, much more, which is, you can look at that, is that indecision, or is that actually, I don't want to spend like 40 million more on this guy than this guy. Like, it feels like a lot of balancing. It also feels a bit like maybe, particularly because this is kind of the first sign. Well, no, I suppose they've done Zubimendi, haven't they? But it feels like as well, they know that once they do this signing, they've got like another big signing or two to make, and that they want to leave room in the budget. So, there could be very good reasons for it. There could be like, we could get Sesko done now, but there'll be no left winger. Like if we do that type thing.
Well, that's the Rubik's Cube of this all, right? Which is, if going from Sesko to Gyokeres means there's money in the budget to get Rodrigo, but meeting Sesko's demands and RB's demands mean you can't get Rodrigo and you're on to sort of a plan B at winger. Now you've got the Jenga tower, right? The idea that like, well, do I believe Sesko is better enough than Gyokeres to give up on getting Rodrigo? And that's where it can get complicated, right? Trying to understand before we pull the trigger on the money that Leipzig and Sesko want, will that money prevent us from getting the absolute top guy, which may be Rodrigo? I don't know. I take your point as well. If you're house hunting and you see your dream home and you love it and you've just fallen in love with it and it's right at the top of your budget and there's another home that's quite a bit less, but it's not your dream home, probably going to buy your dream home, But if you're house hunting and you have two homes and you're like, I could live in either of these, they're both fine, and one is significantly less than the other, and that gives you room to buy all the furniture you need for the house or to do the little fix-up projects you need for that, you'll probably buy the one that's less. If we don't have a strong conviction between Sesko and Gyokeres, then it is sensible to get the one that's the better deal, right? I mean, I've heard rumors of, Gyokeres' wages being 150 grand a week. Well, if he's 65,000, then you buy him. If he's 65 million euro and 150 grand a week, and Sesko is 85 million euro or 80 million euro and wants 280 a week, I'm not saying Sesko isn't worth it, but I am saying that could have a knock-on effect to the other business you can do. And so I do want to hold you a bit on Rodrigo because I'm very interested in your take on this as the Brazil watcher. I sort of disagree with you in the sense that I think Rodrigo is in the caliber of the absolute best attacking player we could theoretically get. Now, I regard striker as probably a bigger need, to your point, because we have Kai and no one. And Kai wasn't even really bought to be a striker. So it is a very big area of need that we have to fill. But in terms of quality, Tim, I regard Rodrigo as the absolute upper echelon, elite, top option we could get. And the mood music there is interesting because for anyone who doesn't watch the Club World Cup, Real Madrid won with 10 men pretty comfortably over Pachuca yesterday. Rodrigo did not get off the bench, didn't even really warm up, never got the bib off. He was rooted to the bench in a game where Mbappe didn't play either, right? He did not get on. Arda Güler playing really well, looking good. Brahim Diaz got on and either got an assist or a goal. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but it's looking, no matter what the noises are like, and Rodrigo every day is posting a white heart emoji and a picture of himself in his Madrid kit, but like, it doesn't look like he's going to get to play on the left at all there, which is where he really wants to play. And he's not even playing all that much right now as he and Xabi Alonso try to figure out the future. So I think he could be gettable, Tim. And the rumors are that we really rate him, which I think you have to. But where are you on him? Because you're the closer Brazil watcher. I think he's the guy you go try to get if you can get him. Do you maybe have a different perspective on that, it sounds like?
So, I mean, I would say I haven't watched as much of Brazil over the last couple of years. Really, that spot in the Brazil team, like, because they have Vinicius as well, which, obviously has at club level, which complicates things a little bit. But, like, I don't think Rodrygo is clearly ahead of Martinelli in that pecking order. Yeah, he kind of was. But it's kind of difficult to pass with Brazil at the moment as well, because they've been in this like interim manager situation for a few years. So like they keep changing manager, who obviously has different kind of different preferences. But and I just don't watch. I say don't watch enough of La Liga. I don't watch any of La Liga. So that's what I mean when I say I don't know. I'm being quite genuine about that. I don't really know. I don't have like a massive idea of the player. I suspect if he's been starting games for Real Madrid for the last few years, he must be pretty good. But I guess I don't really know his level as well. So yeah, when I said I don't know, I didn't necessarily mean I had doubts. I was take that at face value. I just don't really know.
So it's interesting for me with Rodrigo. I obviously rate him very, very highly. I think he's an immense talent, and I think he just finished a very, very poor season for Madrid, a Madrid team that I don't think was great to begin with, in a position that wasn't really where he wanted to play off the right. He only had 1,900 minutes. I don't think it ever really clicked for him. But you look at him the last couple of seasons before that, 10 goals, 5 assists, 9 goals, and 8 assists. Not super, super prolific. The underlying metrics are very, very good. Over 3 shots per 90 as well. The thing about Rodrigo that I think is interesting to consider also is he is slightly younger than Martinelli.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a thing you really think about, but he is slightly younger. So I think he is better. He's younger. I think this can be an Alexis Sanchez type signing, maybe not a Mesut Ozil type signing. It's slightly different to your point because Ozil was, I think, the best 10 in the world at the time that we signed him. But I think it can be a guy who is leaving a big club where he's surplus to requirements, but with a lot still to prove, still entering his absolute prime. You'd be getting Rodrigo coming into his absolute prime, wanting to show the world that he is at the top of the game, going into a World Cup year, with his Brazil spot on the line. Now, the question, and this is one that I think would have to be addressed, there have been some rumors, and I think they are fallacious, but that Martinelli is not on the block for sale, but could be sold. Let's put it that way. There was a little bit of a rumor the other day that Bayern Munich are interested. I think Martinelli is a very, very, very good player. And I think if you have Rodrigo and Martinelli, that is an elite left-hand side platoon of forwards that can really devastate. If you have Rodrigo and Leo, I think you're better. I think we are not just incrementally better. I think we're quite a bit better. But I don't think that's as much of the upgrade as we'd want. I'd love to see Leo move on and Martinelli and Rodrigo be the left-hand side options, but the extent to which you can get a Rodrigo could very well depend on how we allocate those striker resources. And so it all becomes complicated again. And that could explain the slowdown, which is simply before we pull the trigger on the striker, let's see if we think Rodrigo's gettable. Because if he is gettable, we might wind up going with the cheaper striker option to get our first choice wide forward option. And I don't know that I particularly would have a problem with that. I guess I'll ask you the other question then. Do you have a strong lean that there is a right striker target for us between the ones we're looking at?
No.
Interesting.
I don't think I've ever seen either of them. Well, no, I saw Gyokeres play against us. And I must say I was impressed when he played against us. But he played for Brighton as well, didn't he? So I might have accidentally seen him play for Brighton.
He never played in the Premier League.
No, okay. Yeah. Then I probably didn't see him play at Brighton. So no, I don't really. I get, like I said earlier, I kind of get the impression.
I should say, actually, he was at Brighton in a Premier League season in 2018-19, but had zero starts, 0 minutes. His
I think
age
he started in the League Cup. Yeah.
Maybe he did. You could be right about that. That, by the way, I always praise your memory of stuff, but that is exceptional memory because he did in that season make some FA Cup appearances and a League Cup appearance. So you are absolutely right. Gyokeres did play for Brighton in a season where they were in the Premier League, although he did not play Premier League minutes.
I'm certain I didn't watch those games anyway. So.
Well done, though. Yeah, no, well done. He also played for Brighton in their League Cup in 2020, 2021. So that is a check the box for Tim having an incredible memory segment of the podcast, which is becoming a necessity. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I get the impression that their levels are pretty similar, and probably a lot of the supposed preference for Sesko is probably just his age, and they feel that he's got a bit of a ceiling. He's probably got a higher ceiling over a period of time. It doesn't seem to, like, I'm pretty certain if they had a massively strong preference between one of these two, it'd be done by now. If they're kind of negotiating over small details, that might say something. I should say as well, I think probably the other reason we might be negotiating over small details is because it doesn't sound like anyone else is really in for either of these players, although we have had reports that Gyokeres has turned down, or at least like said to the likes of Juventus and Man United, no, I want to go to Arsenal. But none of our Premier League competitors seem to be in for either of these guys. Chelsea have bought Delap. Liverpool have spent the family silver on Wirtz. Manchester United haven't got a lot of PSR headroom anyway, and are having to negotiate. That's why they haven't got Mbumo done, because they can't get the payment structure they need for PSR. Villa aren't in a position to do it. Newcastle have Isak. Man City have Haaland already. So, it just doesn't seem like we have an awful lot of competition, which arguably is probably why we might be sitting on this from a position of power, because it might be, well, no one else is offering you that salary, so why should we offer it to you, type thing. So that maybe Arsenal do just have leverage here. But yeah, I don't have a strong preference. I think almost certainly either one of them improves us, because that's like a blank slot in our team. I think first of all, Havertz enables them, whoever it is, to kind of come in a little bit slowly, or timeshare that role a little bit. But I'm pretty sure either one of them improves us. It's just how much do they improve us? That's the kind of it. What I guess I'd like to avoid. I don't think we'll end up with this situation, but when we finally bought Lacazette in 2017, that's a deal that could have been done 2015.
Oh yeah.
And it was, I think, a similar situation to this, in that we needed another striker other than Giroud for ages, and that could have been Lacazette 2 years earlier. We clearly didn't do it because Arsene Wenger wasn't convinced. But then it just got to a point where it's like, this is like 4 summers. We've needed a striker now. We've got to do something. So you kind of pull the trigger. And we ended up with Lacazette. And I mean, to be fair, he was okay, wasn't he? Most of the time, I think he really tailed off towards the end. But you could see why we weren't massively keen to... he was, for the large part, he was an okay player and like a good pro and all of that, but you can see why we weren't biting Leon's hand off 2 years earlier to do it. So I guess I'm kind of slightly nervous about falling into that situation where it's like, we've got to get someone, anyone, and I do think we are. It's a paradox. We are in that situation where we have to get someone, but at the same time, there isn't a non-zero chance that they might just be okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's entirely possible. I would say the biggest, critique I have of the Lacazette signing, or I'd say the biggest evidence that we weren't satisfied with Lacazette signing, is going for Aubameyang one window later, right? That's not a glowing recommendation of the player you've just signed. But this is why I lean pretty strongly to Benjamin Sesko. I mean, he's 22 years old, just turned 22. I think there is, and Gyokeres, by the way, is 27. I think there is a chance that you are, in the relatively near future, back in the striker market if you go for Gyokeres. It's not to say he couldn't be good, but I think there's a chance where he's okay for a bit, but he doesn't hit the heights you hope, and you're looking for a striker again pretty soon. Whereas I think if you have Kai Havertz in his early mid-prime and Benjamin Sesko at 22, I think that position is in a really nice place for a while. while Sesko is developing and I think has a chance to be a very, very elite striker, but you have a very good option that can play also in Kai Havertz. I like building around that. And then if you go get Rodrigo, who's, again, younger than Martinelli, now your attack with Saka and maybe Nwaneri and Sesko and Kai and Rodrigo and Martinelli. You're talking about early 20s to 24, 25-year-old players at all the positions in your front three, and you're really equipped to go fire away at all the big stuff. And you know what? If the players aren't as good as you need and you don't win stuff, that can happen. You're not guaranteed to win stuff, but at least you are built for a 4 or 5 year run at the key positions to go make your assault on all the top trophies. So that would be the strategy I'd hope we'd execute on.
And also, I think we should acknowledge as well, when it comes to squad building, it's a little bit like getting the career you want or something. A lot of luck's involved. Sometimes things just work out a lot better than you expect, or sometimes something's foisted on you. So I think in the early Arteta, we hit a pretty hot streak on recruitment, right? We got most things right for a couple of years, and maybe we're due a stinker somewhere. Although we've had some signings maybe haven't hit the mark for different reasons, but at the same time, sometimes stuff can just fall into your lap as well. Stuff like Miles Lewis-Skelly being a really good left back. And maybe I was really interested to see Nwaneri was tried over to the left for the under-21s a little bit this summer. We haven't seen it, but maybe he becomes a really good left winger, and maybe that falls into our laps. Much in the way it must be said that Saka becoming a really good right winger, which I don't think any of us really saw at the time that it happened, kind of fell into our laps at a time where we had Pepe and Willian, and it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do here? And, Arteta had the bright idea, why don't we put this insanely talented player who doesn't have a position in the team yet, why don't we just put him here? Because that's where the position is. Yeah. And we could do the same with Nwaneri. He could really kick on. I'm not saying this will happen, but that to me would be a stroke of luck. But it could happen. They could try him on the left. It could really work, and you go, bang, we've got our right and our left sorted. Stuff like that does happen. Sometimes you get lucky.
Yeah, and I just think don't pull a Lacazette in the sense of don't buy a guy for big money at an important position that you're not sold on because you just feel like you have to do something. In a way, if we love Gyokeres and we think he's the guy and we get him, then by all means fine. But if he's the plan B we're not sold on and he's going to be 65 million, in a way, then I'd be fine with an Ollie Watkins because it's he's not going to be super expensive. He's on 130 a week right now. I think you put him on 160 a week. He wants to be at Arsenal. He loves Arsenal. And you get a Premier League proven guy to fill a gap for a while until you do find that striker of the future you really like. And then you go get Rodrigo. So these are all the building blocks that have to fit together. And so while I can identify with the argument that we've known we needed a striker for many windows now, we should be pretty far along in the process at this point. I also recognize that the striker we buy has ramifications for the winger we buy, has ramifications for the future of the project, and so all these things have to be weighed in. What we do know is Mikel wants this player in by the preseason. And so I think, we're getting ready to go away on this warm weather training in a couple of days. I'm fine if the player's not in for that. But once we leave for Singapore, on July 21st or July 22nd, whenever that flight's going to depart, you'd like the striker to be on that plane.
Yep.
So that
100%.
If we're into, let's say, July 10th and there isn't an answer to this question at that point, I think it is fair to start to say, we've known we need this long. Preseason is on the horizon. We know one of the things that hurt us last season is not having our players in for preseason. Let's get going. I mean, look, we haven't even announced Zubamendi yet, but I think everybody knows that's done and he's going to be there for that. So we'll just have to see. Okay, I want to talk a little bit just about winning in general and about Bukayo Saka and Bukayo Saka's role in our future success. But before I do that, I do want to just quickly make sure you know how to build an e-commerce site, because I know a lot of you are sitting here going, this is a fun chat, but I still don't know how to build my e-commerce site. So let me help you with that one little issue. The way you build it is with Shopify. So if you like the idea of, selling your art or selling a product you make, or, you've you've got a product that you really believe in and your friend's like, this is great, you should sell it more widely, whatever the case is, the key to e-commerce, I think, is a few things. First of all, you can't just be on a website now. You need your products on things like Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. The other thing is, because there are so many small businesses, I think people have an expectation of a certain degree of professionalism and polish to a website they're going to shop from, right? Just that confidence that, oh yeah, I can buy from this site. What Shopify does is give you the ability to focus on the product you make, the descriptions you write, the pictures you take. The rest of it is done by them, integrating you with the social media platforms, cart checkout processes and shipping costs and taxes and stuff. There's a lot that goes into running a business that Shopify basically takes off your hand. You're not just getting a place to build a website. You are getting a company that becomes your partner in helping you run a business so that you can just make the thing you love to make and be online. And oh, by the way, you're using an e-commerce platform that like Fortune 500 companies use it because it has the ability to support that powerful website so you can scale your business too. So established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ArsenalVision and start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now, Tim? Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
No. Okay. So I want to ask you a quick question just about winning in general. You and I did a top... Yeah, winning's great, to the extent that we remember it. You and I did a top 5 list for Patreon last week. So it was top 5 players of the post-Invincible era, top 5 memories, top 5 games, top 5 Premier League seasons. And the thing we sort of found ourselves leaning on is that we are living through the very upper end of those top 5s. Post-Invincibles, we're probably in the best era of Arsenal post-Invincibles. Now, there are going to be people who say the only thing that matters are trophies, and in that respect, this is not one of the best eras because it doesn't have a trophy. It depends where you evaluate the FA Cup or if you think the FA Cup is reflective of whether your Project TM is going in the right direction. But I do want to ask you what you think about overall, when you zoom out, the period we're in. We got used to the idea that Arsene Wenger would be here for 20 plus years. But managers don't tend to stay like that. And I think Mikel Arteta now is he second only to Pep in tenure in the Premier League? I think that's right.
Probably.
Second most tenured manager. He's going into, is this going to be his 7th season? 6th?
He came in midway through 1920, so 2021.
1, 2, 22.
It's like his 6th full season.
His 6th full season. There is a point at which, even if you love a manager and think the manager is one of the most talented in the game, and I have to say, I do think Mikel Arteta is one of the most talented in the game, that relationship between club and manager just gets stale, and if things aren't being won, and if the ultimate success isn't achieved, even if it's a mistake to move on, clubs move on. You see this happen. You see successful managers decide their time is up. That was Klopp at Liverpool. I mean, Pep has traditionally moved on very quickly from places, or reasonably quickly. I mean, City is looking like the exception. How important is the winning window right now? And how do you evaluate this era of Arsenal? Because, as I think we found during our top 5 list episode, it's really kind of right at the top. It's just missing that validating moment,
Yep, that's exactly where it is, and I think that's the manager's kind of said that himself. I think they're kind of, some of their behaviour in the market tells you that as well, like signing Mourinho last year, like that's a win now signing, isn't it? They tried to sign Watkins in January, albeit they wouldn't go quite to the price, but the fact they bid for him in the first place, that's a win now type thing. We're not like signing 21, 22-year-olds from Udinese and Brighton anymore. So I think, and I think even Arteta's kind of speech at the last home game of the season was much more perfunctory this year. And I think that was just because he had less to say. I think it really was like, I don't have to explain this anymore. Like, we need to win. We are in that, we've been building towards this and we've built towards it really well. I mean, personally, they have my sympathy in terms of winning the league has always been ridiculously hard, but it's harder now than it's ever been, basically. So, trying to get past like clubs like Manchester City mainly, and then Liverpool, it's really hard now. Like, the level is so much higher, and I think all the other teams are better. Like, I think 20 years ago, a lot of the teams outside the top 6 would probably get relegated now. Like, I think there is more of a spread, or at least pretty much every team that doesn't get relegated has at least one player you'd like. And like, that didn't necessarily used to happen. I don't remember playing like Birmingham City like 17, 18 years ago and thinking, I'd really like Clinton Morrison or Robbie Savage, whereas now you come away from a game going, I'd take that player. Usually a wide forward, actually, from an Arsenal perspective, but it's like, I'd take that player. So, like, it is insanely bloody difficult, but at the same time, it does have to happen. It's as simple as that. Like I said it a couple of years ago, I don't want to be Pochettino's Spurs. That's not what I want. I mean, we have, like, this manager has won a trophy, so I guess we're not that already. But yeah, it's like the run up has been amazing, I think, and I think we still take it for granted. We still underestimate the size of the job done. I think we still underestimate how good Arsenal are and everything like that. And I do think there is a sense that, like I said, I do think people have lost perspective a bit, but I don't disagree. Like, that window's now. And again, they have my sympathy as well, because I think 23-24 was a little, like, in terms of the quality we produced, I think that was a league title winning season. I think that would have won the league last season, I think, no question. And in quite a lot of other seasons. So there is a sense to which it's like, what Arteta says is absolutely correct. Like, a lot of these things, it's about getting your timing right, time and place and all of that. But obviously you can't say that over like 6-7 years. If you don't do it in that period, you can't. I think over this period where we have truly competed for the league, I think we're just about still in that window where it's like, things haven't quite gone our way at different times, but you can't say that forever. And I still view this upcoming season as a massive opportunity to do it. I really do. And you can never predict how a season's going to pan out. You cannot you can't even take for granted that we'd finish second. Like, finishing second is really difficult as well. So you can't take those things for granted, but like, I think there should be no doubt. And I think also, as much as like there's a veneer, I think, of anxiety, and I think maybe a little bit of dramatics, maybe a little bit of hyperbole, but the reason we think and feel like this is because we do rate our team, right? Yeah. And so it ultimately, like, there's a lot of fatalism. There's like, well, we're a bit crap, but it's like, well, you obviously don't think that because you think we should win the league. Like, you can't hold, those are contradictory positions that you're holding. You're anxious about that because you think we're good enough, and I think that's right. It's just about how you kind of pass it. I do think we're good enough. I really do, which is why I'm desperate to see it get done.
Yeah, and when you think about how hard this is right now, we are living in the hardest era to do any of this. First of all, because of Manchester City at the top of the heap doing what Manchester City do, and we all know what that is. So you're starting at a disadvantage, right? You have to win the Premier League. You have to get past this team that has spent in an unprecedented way through, let's just say, questionable means, okay? You have Liverpool, who have been very, very good and deserve all the credit that they get. Chelsea trying to spend like City and still not getting close. United and Spurs 2 spots off relegation, right? Newcastle, owned by Saudi Arabia, barely clinging to a Champions League expanded place in 5th. These are big clubs with immense resources, and you've got to finish above all of them to win the league. And we're not even in an era where Spurs and United are really competing, or where Chelsea seem to totally have their act together despite their spending. So you're right. I mean, to stay even second in this context is really, really hard. There are many other big clubs with resources that match or exceed ours that have not been able to accomplish that. Now, you're going to get war a trophy from the people that say things like war a trophy. And I get that, which is why we need to get that trophy. I think if I look around the world, though, and I said, okay, let's say Mikel Arteta decides, forget the hyperbole of he has to win a title or he's gone. Like, let's say Mikel at the end of the season just says, you know what? I'm burnt out. I've gone really hard for 6 seasons. I've learned so much, but for me, I need a break. Let's, whatever the causes are that he had to depart. I look around the world and I say, there might be 2 or 3 people that I'd be excited to see come in. I mean, this is not like it was a couple of years back where I looked around and I saw coaches that I really admired and thought could be good for us everywhere. I don't see a lot about our football that desperately needs improving. And I'm wondering if there's a name that jumps out to you, because the one that I have to admit, and I'm only going to bring this up just to stir the pot a little bit, there is a world where I think tracking Cesc Fàbregas' development as a coach is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He's an interesting project in Como, a unique project. He's getting a lot of attention. I think Inter were looking at him. I don't know, Tim. Like, I don't know how Arsenal fans would react, because I know there are some like myself who still love him unreservedly, and there are others that have very, very different feelings and will never forgive him. Let's say Mikel Arteta wins everything, wins the treble, whatever happens, and a few years on, it is time to move on. Is that a name you'd be excited to see us interested in? How do you feel about Cesc Fàbregas' development as a manager right now, and the possibility that he could be someone who Arsenal would look at in the future whenever Mikel's time is up organically for whatever reason?
Yeah, he could come in and be Jorginho's assistant, couldn't he?
Okay. Santi Jorginho would co-manage and Cesc could be their assistant. Yeah.
I mean, what I would say about that is I still think that I'm certain that Cesc holds a flame for Arsenal, so that if he does become a really good coach, I think there's a good chance he'd probably like to do that. I think it's one of those things where he probably does feel more connected to Arsenal than any of his other kind of clubs. Like, I know he won stuff at Chelsea, but then was kind of edged out of the team a little bit. Barca, I know, he's a Barca boy and all of that, and he won loads of stuff there, but it feels like Arsenal's like the proper connection he had. And, I don't know how much of that affection that I'm speculating he has is for Arsene Wenger or Arsenal, or how much those two things are kind of separate in his mind. But if he does become a really good coach, I think we'd have a really good chance, actually. I think I'm pretty sure he'd like that if he gets to that level.
Do you think he'd be accepted, or do you think it's too polarizing?
No. I think I think a lot of water's under the bridge since then, to be honest. And ultimately, like, when someone's not a player anymore as well, I think that kind of changes things, because you don't interact with the manager as much, like inside the stadium and on a match day. Like, so even now, I don't sense there's that much animosity. And actually, as manager, you can get rid of any of that pretty quickly by winning some football games. Yeah. And then everyone accepts you, basically. And, like that does happen and is going to happen again. You get a former Tottenham player, I'm sure, managing Arsenal one day. It's happened before.
It's not going to be Harry Kane, though. You know what I mean?
No. Maybe not like an absolute club legend, but someone who kind of passed through there might end up being a brilliant coach.
Let's put it the other way. I don't think Cesc could manage Tottenham.
No. I think like club legends, I think that's different.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I really don't see why not. I think we'd be in a good position, and it's a bit like Arteta, really. Arteta played for a lot of teams during his career, but it's really clear that Arsenal was the one he connected with, whereas arguably on an individual level he probably accomplished more at Everton, but Arsenal was the one he felt connected to. That was the job he wanted. He was never linked with any other job. He said the day he left, he said, I'd like to come back one day. The day he was unveiled, he said, I've been preparing for this for a while. Like, Arteta's a proper Arsenal man. He really is. And which I find fascinating, given like he played for a lot of clubs during his career, but I suspect that Cesc has probably got a bit of that too. Even Barcelona, I reckon, from a purely footballing perspective, he'd look back on his career and say, yeah, Arsenal, those were my best years.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And, I know, like, for example, he read Arsblog back in the day. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's something you do if you're just sort of there to collect a paycheck and don't really care. If you're reading a fan blog, I think at some point you're pretty connected. And he did come in as a very young player. 16 years old, he's playing for Arsenal. That's formative. Those are formative times of your life. I only raise it because I see the trajectory he's on. He certainly looks like someone who could be one of the big names up and coming in management. I think he's probably, I would think, a few seasons away from being in a position where he'd start to get looked at by a big Premier League club, or a very big, well, I was going to say a very big European club, but Inter are already looking at him, so maybe I'm way off base. But at the end of the day, that's just one that I'm curious about, because like I am still, just so we're clear, I want Mikel Arteta to stay. I think Mikel Arteta is the right guy. I don't see anyone in world football that I believe, at least from a coaching perspective, is doing a better job than Mikel Arteta, where I think that guy improves us clearly. But longer term, there will eventually be change. And that's just sort of a name that I thought about as one that's kind of interesting. Ultimately, though, if you look at making it in the last four of Europe again for the first time since we were there, was it 2012? When did we face United?
2009.
9, that's it. Yeah, thank you. And only the third time ever, obviously, the other time being the Villarreal tie, but I mean, other than that, like, it's a limited history in Europe, and we're back at that top table, so that's exciting. We've hit 89 points, which I know isn't a thing, but it's our second most Premier League points ever. We're right there. We're in that zone where you can start to expect to win things. And so it does feel like it's time. And it's so interesting because I do think, let's say we won the Premier League this coming season. Suddenly, I think these last few very good seasons would be thought of as good as they are. You know what I mean? Like if we never win anything, I think there will be a dismissal, and an understandable dismissal, of this era. But if we win the Premier League or win a Champions League, then suddenly I think these near miss seasons and these seasons that weren't quite what we hoped will be regarded warmly as sort of part of a really strong era of Arsenal. But it needs that trophy to be the thing. Because I'll tell you something.
Liverpool
if the Invincibles
needed that
had
as
lost,
well.
What were you going to say?
Liverpool needed that as well, and they got it. They won they actually won the Champions League first.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That was their kind of, we needed that. We were ready for this type thing.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about Liverpool, if they hadn't won that one title under Klopp, like, they'd have a 97-point season or whatever it was with no title, and a 92-point season or whatever it was with no title, or and would that era have been regarded warmly or dismissed? I don't know. I can't say how they would have looked at it. But I mean, if you look at the Invincibles, if they lose even one game that season and they don't go invincible, I wonder if we'd look back at that era and say, for as good as that group was, it could have done even more. Now, granted, I realize there were 3 titles and 2 doubles and all this stuff, but I just wonder. Winning is one of those things that everybody quantifies what it is differently. There are people that would say, I'd take even a League Cup. There are people that would say, the only thing I want is the league, and everything in between. But I think if we win something with this group, it will suddenly make these last few seasons feel that much more special in our mind as part of the development process to getting there. Anyway, I did want to finish with something on Bukayo Saka. So, Tim, I think in every era of great winning football, there is a player who's sort of the talisman, who's the player you think of in that era. For the Invincibles, for me, it's Thierry Henry, but there were so many who could be. It could be Vieira, it could be Perez, it could be, Sol Campbell. I mean, whoever you want to have in there. But for me, it's Henry, and I think rightfully so, one of the great players to ever play the game, and certainly the best player in Premier League history. For Liverpool in this winning era, I think it is quite clearly Mohamed Salah. For City, even though Haaland's been great, I still think it's Kevin De Bruyne. And I think for Arsenal, it is Bukayo Saka. And I'm wondering if you think, and you may regard him as already there, but do you think he is ready for the moment now, where he ascends from, Arsenal fans regard him as one of the best in the game, but others are still learning about him, finding about. Do you think he's ready to really ascend? And for me, for that to happen, I think the one thing that Saka has left to prove, and I'll put prove in quotes because he's got nothing to prove, he's a brilliant player, is just that elite goal-scoring upside. So his best ever non-penalty goal-scoring season is 2 seasons ago where he had 12. The season before this last one, he had 10, but he had 16 total goals. He had 6 penalties. And then obviously an injury hit season this season, his assists were off the chart. He finished with 5 non-penalty goals, 6 goals overall. So I wonder what you think is next for Bukayo Saka, because I think he's entering the age now, the moment now, the time now, where he's going to go into his best years as a player. And if he can add just a little bit more magic from a goal-scoring standpoint, take a few extra shots, score a few more goals, I think he goes into the absolute elite tier of the game where there's really only a couple of players that have a claim to be as good or better than him. And I think that's the thing every era has, right? In it, whether it's Salah or De Bruyne or Thierry Henry or whoever it is, I think it's Saka's era to be that. Do you think that we could see maybe him go up another tier now to the very, very top of the game this coming season?
I think that is maybe one of the best things we could get out of the right striker signing. Because Saka's carried a heavy burden.
Yeah.
I do think Havertz is... I regard Havertz as probably the second most important player in our attack, not least because of the number of jobs he does. But I think if we could sign a striker that could get 15 to 20 goals themselves, but that Saka could like ascend in terms of goal scoring as well, I think that would be a really, really good result, like maximising him. I definitely think so. I definitely think it's in him to get that kind of another 5 goals a season or so. He's not. I don't think he's ever going to be like Salah's. I know Salah's got good assist numbers, to be fair, but I don't look at Salah as a creative player directly. He's creative because he makes stuff happen. He takes defenders with him, etc., etc. But I don't see him building Liverpool's play. I see him on the end of it, whereas I see Saka kind of does both, actually. But he's so important to how we build and how many touches he has and all of that. So, I don't think he'll ever go to that, I'm basically a striker that plays out wide type goal scoring. But, if you're looking at overall goal contributions, throw his assists in there as well, I definitely think, he can get another somewhere between 5 and 10, whether it's assists or goals, definitely. I suspect he might have done that this season without the injury. The numbers were looking really good at the point that he got injured. And this season, he is going to get some rest. It is a tournament-free summer. That is another reason I regard this year as a really big chance for Arsenal. We do tend to be quite good off the back of tournament-free summers. So I definitely think that's in him. And actually, we're talking about how much difference would a guy like Rodrygo make and all of that. Really, the most, maybe not obvious, but I think the most realistic path to us improving our attack is probably still that Bukayo Saka gets even better and gets even more end product. And that's the one I regard as not a banker, but something I'm pretty certain will happen. Either one of the strikers we sign might be a complete bust, for all I know. I kind of don't think they will be, but that might be a complete bust, whereas I'm pretty confident that with a clean bill of health, Saka's numbers and his influence will continue to climb, because I agree with you. I think he's got that, his end product is excellent, but I agree with you, he's got that kind of just absolutely blows everyone else in the league away level in him that we probably haven't quite seen yet. And I definitely think, if I were the Arsenal manager, if I were on the coaching staff, that's where I'd be looking at. This is what we can maximise. I don't know how much better Havertz can get. I don't know how much better Martinelli can get. I'm sure they can get better, but how much, I feel like we got those players. Whereas I look at maybe someone like Rice as well, and I look at Saka and I think that's a lemon we can probably squeeze a little bit more.
Yeah, he's going to go into his age 24 season. And I think if you look, his dribbles are up, his dribble success is up, his shots are up. He was at almost 3.5 shots per 90 this past season. Obviously, his expected assists were up. I think he has the talent to be the best wide player in world football. And I don't think that's even really a question. I mean, who is that group? It's Vinny, who... I'm probably slightly lower on Vinny than most people. I know he is regarded as one of the best wide players in world football, but, he's up there. Lamine Yamal is already up there, for sure. Yep. Salah is up there, but I just think it's one of those things with Salah where eventually he's got to recede back from that point at his age. It's Saka. And then if you want to put guys in like Doué, but again, Doué's had, half of a season at a pretty high level. At PSG, just did it on such a big stage that everybody's familiar with him. Kvaratskhelia is great, but again, also I don't think as good as Saka, candidly, and I don't think he does as much as Saka. So you can go through all the players, but I think it is the case that Saka's already in the elite tier of wide players, but I think he has that Ballon d'Or level talent. I do think he has that. If he were to win a Premier League with Arsenal, for example, and cover your ears, everybody, win a World Cup with England, in a World Cup year, he'd be the Ballon d'Or winner. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But I think he can do that. So to me, I think these next 3 seasons, his age 24, age 25, age 26 season, the thing that can elevate Arsenal more than whether it's Sesko or Gyokeres, more than whether it's Rodrygo or we stick with Martinelli or it's Nico Williams, or it's not going to be Nico Williams. I mean, whoever it is, it's Antoine Semenyo. More than any of that is Bukayo Saka just goes to the level that Henry went to, that Salah went to, that De Bruyne went to. And I realize those are different levels. And, if he goes to the level Henry went to, we're going to win trebles every season. But you get my point. And I do think that is in Bukayo Saka's range of outcomes. Obviously, he has to stay fit, which, I think by and large has not been an issue for him. So we'll see. But for me, Tim, this is the area, and I think you made such a good point why the striker signing is important. If there are players, and why a Rodrigo signing might be important, if there are players that just occupy defenders a little more, that just force defenses to be a little more thoughtful about who they focus on, then Bukayo Saka will be even more devastating. And as a last point, maybe it is a chance for Mikel Arteta to look at what Slot did with Salah, look at some of the ways that other wide forwards are platformed, and say, are there tweaks I can make that ensure that we get the best Saka we can get? Because there is no signing we're going to make that will be as influential as peak Saka can be this season.
Yep.
And he is already our most popular player. He's already a global superstar. But can he go to the level I think most Arsenal fans regard him as already talent-wise, but globally, to that shortlist Ballon d'Or level of being the reason we win things? I think he can. But as unfair as this next statement is going to be, I think he needs to. Mm-hmm. There is this perception that teams win because they have all these great attackers. Let me tell you something. They don't. Manchester City have Erling Haaland and nobody else really scores that many goals. Okay? They really don't. Liverpool have Salah. No one else scores that many goals. These really elite, great teams, as great as they are, they don't share them around as much as you think. Like, granted, all right, you got Barcelona with like Lewandowski and Rafinha, but like Rafinha did most of the goal scoring there. Harry Kane does most of it for Bayern. Like, there's usually one player that carries a lot of the load in attack, and I think it's fine to ask Saka to do it. I think he can handle that load,
Yeah, I think that's really right, and that reminds me of another podcast I listened to last week, actually, which I think you'd have liked. Libero, it's called, which selected journalists that people will have heard of. We're talking about, but yeah, they were talking about like those world record transfers, and actually why they quite often don't work. And they're coming up with a number of theories like, well, actually, if you buy that player, you've got to base your whole team around them, and sometimes teams have trouble doing that. Like, those aren't like really like technical. What do we need? It's like, buy Neymar. Like, screw what you need, buy Neymar, buy Mbappe. And actually, sometimes those signings don't work because of that. But they were talking about, actually, when you look at it, there's a lot of players at the elite level who talent-wise are not separated by very much. If you play in the right team with the right system around you and the right players around you, that will make you look better. But they were talking about that like 0.1% elite. Like, those are the guys who are separated in terms of talent. And actually, Rory Smith was talking about, he said he was in an email exchange with Billy Bean at the time that Arsenal signed Ozil. They were talking about the Ozil signing. And Rory Smith kind of said, I emailed him and I kind of said, doesn't look like a very Moneyball signing. And he was, apparently Billy Bean said, no, this is a real Moneyball signing because like he's undervalued by the market and you think he can like win you the league or something. So he was like, that is the most Moneyball signing. Like, Moneyball doesn't necessarily mean cheap. Moneyball means I put this guy in my team, he makes my team better. And he was saying like that didn't come out in the movie version of Moneyball, but in the book, it's kind of all there. So he was saying like, no, actually, spending quite a bit of money on the guy that you are convinced makes you a much better team. That is like the most Moneyball signing you can make. And I think that kind of nicely illustrates the point you're making there.
Yeah. Well, I think we can leave it there, Tim. I think we've covered enough for a day.
We got to Moneyball, like we have to leave it there now.
Yeah, that's that. All Arsenal Vision pods go until we hit Moneyball, and at that point, we just knock it on the head. And it's funny because like I look back at some of the pods we've done in June, just to the point what we started the pod with about like, is the rumor mill causing more anxiety early and earlier? June is usually when we're doing the like player of the season from last season, and reviewing favorite games from the last season and drafting players for our favorite post-Emirates era players of all time, just silly nonsense to fill the time. And now it just feels like there's such an urgency. I do wonder though, sometimes we blame this on the transfer the transfer rumor ecosystem, and it's all about social media and ITKs. I do think it is also bound up in the fact that we felt so close on the cusp, on the precipice of winning something, that there is this real urgency to do it. Like we've got to get over the line. And because we know so clearly where we need a signing to get over the line, it just feels so obvious and so urgent that I think that's also driving some of the insistence on getting it done. So we'll see. We'll have a Transfer Daily later today. We have some Patreon stuff coming up, some history pods from Tim, which are some of my favorite. And if you want to stay connected to the history of Arsenal, we have a whole history playlist. One thing that's cool about the Patreon, first of all, you can put those pods right in your regular pod player. So you just listen to them in your Apple player, Spotify, or whatever you use. But there's also playlists that we do. So in other words, they're collections. So if you're like, you know what? I'm going on a long road trip. You could go to the history collection and just listen to history pods on the road trip. Or you're like, you know what? I just want to listen to scouting pods on audio. You could listen to all the scouting audio we've done from this summer, last summer, for all time. So kind of a neat way to listen. Use code AVP, you'll get 50% off first month. Anyway, hey, by the way, if you can also give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen. I know it sounds silly, but increasingly that is important for people discovering the pod, and we'd love for new people to find us and be a part of this. So if you want to do that, we'd really appreciate it. Okay, Tim, thanks.
My pleasure as always.
All right, my pleasure as always as well. We'll have a Transfer Daily for you later, some history pods this week, and more. So more on that as we get it. And of course, we'll do a pod tomorrow on Sesko and Gyokeres, both signing. So that'll be exciting. Okay, we love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Transfer 1-0.